My name is Jason Allen. I'm a realtor based in Palm Springs, California, and each week I like to do a market report focusing on one of the four cities where I do most of my business. This week, it's Rancho Mirage. If you are familiar with this report, I go over some very basic things at the beginning. You can just use the chapter settings down below and skip to the actual report part. I like to start with the three things that define a property's value. This is important for both a buyer and a seller to understand. The first is property condition. The second is property location. And then the third is the market demand. This report will focus on the market demand. This is really the question of how many buyers are in the marketplace when you go to sell your home or when you go to buy your home, and how much inventory is available. Supply and demand. If there's a large supply and very little demand, prices are going to be down. Typically, real estate runs in a balanced state, or slightly one way, slightly the other. If you consider COVID, we had limited inventory and extraordinary demand in most parts of the city, so prices went up. That is all subsided at this point. And then, of course, demand can be predicated on type of home, whether it's a single-family dwelling or if it's a condominium, townhouse, that sort of thing. And measuring market demand has historically been based on what we call the absorption rate, or months of inventory. So what we look at is how many things have sold recently, how many things are on the market, and we divide one into the other and we come up with the month supply of inventory. I personally do not like this anymore. I think the fundamental issues are that it aggregates all property types. As you'll see in Rancho Mirage, houses seem to be moving well, condos less well. I prefer to use two graphs that I've created. One is the pending rate bar graph. The other is the over/under asking price scatter graph. I'm going to show you each of those for both condos and houses. So this is the report section. Let's dive right in. Let's start with condos. On a market demand basis, over asking seller's scatter graph, each of these blue dots represents a sale in relationship to the asking price, which is the red line. And as you can see very quickly, most of these things have sold under asking. And there's just nothing we can do about that. Very few, if any, are over. Here we have one down here at the lower price point that went over the asking price. So what does that say as a seller? As a seller, all of these people that got less, their home was not priced correctly to begin with. And some of that is not necessarily the fault of the agent. We look at what sales have been in the most recent past, and then we use that to help determine current market value. But if demand is lower and these people need to sell, then the property may ultimately sell for less than what was asking. And we can see this in a pie chart form here, a little bit more visual. 78.8% of the condos that sold over the previous 30 days in Rancho Mirage went for under asking. 4.55% sold above asking. So there are a few, not quite 5%, but if some of the properties went over. And then 16.67% sold at the asking price. Market demand can also be looked at in terms of pending rate. Now, when a property goes on the market, it's considered active. Once a buyer makes an offer and there are contingencies are ways for the buyer to get out of the deal, it becomes active contingent. And then once all the contingencies are removed, it is a pending sale. And by that, it means if the buyer were to back out, they would lose their earnest money deposit. Let's ignore August because we don't have enough data for August. It's not the end of the month. But if we look at July, pendings in July, so those things should close in August, way down compared to June. June was lower than May. May was about the same as April, down from our high water mark of March. Now, we can only see things in hindsight. So if you've been on the fence on whether you should sell or not, oh, it's March, gee whiz, I missed the boat. Maybe, there are some strategies there. We can talk about that. If you're a buyer, you can see, wow, demand is down. And if someone's on the market and they really need to sell, this might be a good opportunity for me to go in and make an offer that's under and be among the 78, so almost 80% of the people that scored a property under the asking price. So that's market demand with respect to pending. And then we look at the inventory. We break this down in bar graph form. Year over year, it's up over last year. However, it's down over the last month. So some of the inventory got absorbed and new product hasn't come on. New listings haven't come on. That may actually push pendings higher as we flush through August, simply because if there are people in the marketplace wanting to buy and there's not a lot to choose from, they may go ahead and select something that is available as opposed to waiting for more inventory to come on. And then if we look at unit sales for condos, it's down over last month and it's down over last year. Condos generally are down in volume and in sales price. And by the way, I don't go after the median price anymore. I don't know that it's actually that useful. It is important when you look at things longitudinally. It just doesn't help an individual trying to make a purchase today. Now let's look at houses. Again, our market demand, the over asking price scatter graph again shows nothing over the asking price. Maybe this one a little tiny bit. We're just looking at a market that's getting the asking price or less than the asking price. And if I go to the next slide, which is our pie chart, 81.4% of the houses sold below the asking price, 4% sold above, 14.5% sold at the asking price. So many homes are coming on the market, we'll say overpriced for the current market, but those prices again are based on what has been sold in the very recent past. In a fluctuating market, it's hard to grab that. Again, during COVID, it was sort of the opposite. You'd put a property on the market, let's say for $1 million, and you get several offers and suddenly it was worth $1.3 million. But that $1 million mark wasn't manipulative. It was based on what sold in that neighborhood, similar property in the very recent past. And then the pending bar graph, I removed it for the houses, but I just took off August. You can see July pendings are way down. May and June, about level. Again, March was the high water mark for us in Rancho Mirage. And then inventory is down over last month. So again, houses have been absorbed, up over last year. And then unit sales, houses up over last month and up over last year. If you're a seller, if you're a buyer, on the other hand, you want to see inventory increase perhaps before you go into the market if you've been looking online and not seeing anything you like. My overall analysis for the Rancho Mirage market, August 2025, is that it's a mixed market. Condo sellers, you're facing headwinds. Listing today is best when your circumstances dictate it. In other words, don't try and time the market. If you need to put your condo on the market, do it now. If you don't, wait and see what happens. House sellers, you may have a window of opportunity given we have lower inventory and there's clearly stronger buyer interest. Condo buyer, there are many opportunities to buy at this time. I would say get out there, look, and then let's identify a property that works well for you. I'll do some analysis on it, and then you can make a decision on whether you want to pursue it. And then for a house buyer, there's more competition in the market. If now is the time for you to buy, select a house, be discerning, and then pursue it with gusto. Don't assume that it's going to go under asking if it's the house you really want to get. I'll close with saying that Keller Williams is a worldwide network. If you are somewhere else in the country and you want to come here, I can help you find an agent in your market and then obviously assist you in finding a home here. Likewise, if you are leaving this market because of my worldwide network, I'm happy to refer you to an agent where you're going. And in that case, they can help you determine if now is the right time to buy at your target destination. A little bit about me. I won't stay here long on this slide. You can always pause it, read about me, and feel free to ask me any questions. I want to thank you for letting me present to you today. You've made it to the end. I always appreciate it when people make it to the end. Follow me to the desert. I'm happy to find a home for you here. Subscribe so you get notifications when I post new content. I recently did a piece on leased land. I would encourage you to look at that if you're buying in this area so that you start to get some understanding of what's going on with leases. That's it for now. Thanks so much. Take care.